BloodRush Undying Wish is the kind of game that doesn't wait for you to get comfortable, and that's exactly what makes it work. It throws you into a world where time is your enemy, movement is your lifeline, and standing still? That's just another way to die. At first glance, it's a fast-paced hack-and-slash roguelike with gothic pixel art and tight arenas, but it doesn't play like most of its peers. BloodRush forces you into constant motion, not just to look cool, but because your health is always draining. You're bleeding out from the moment the run begins. Every second is a sprint, every combo a gamble, every kill a brief extension on your life. It's tense, it's unforgiving, and once it clicks, it's hard to put down. The gameplay is built around one core idea: movement is everything. This isn't one of those games where dodging is a last resort or a cooldown ability. Here, dashing, diving, slamming, and flipping through the air is your combat style. You're rewarded for chaining together attacks with movement abilities, creating fluid, stylish sequences where you're never quite touching the ground for long. It's not about memorizing attack patterns. It's about reacting in real time, making fast decisions, and adapting on the fly. There's a momentum to the game that feels more like a rhythm than a strategy. You start a run with a basic build, but quickly unlock more weapons, new talents, and wild combos that change how you move and fight. Each run becomes this evolving dance of offense and survival. And when you pull off a perfect chain, rushing an enemy, launching them mid-air, slamming them down, then dashing through another group before executing a finisher, it's pure adrenaline. Now, what's clever about BloodRush is how it uses its roguelike structure to sharpen that feeling. You're not just running for loot or stats, you're learning how to manipulate the game's systems. You're crafting builds that lean into your favorite playstyle. Maybe it's aerial control with a high-mobility weapon, maybe it's ground-heavy combos with heavy-hitting slams, or maybe you're chasing that perfect synergy between talents and blood recovery mechanics. There's room to experiment, but not in a way that slows you down. The urgency keeps everything moving. The arenas themselves push this even further. Each of the 8 combat zones feels distinct, not just in look, but in mechanics. Some stages are vertical nightmares with platforms everywhere. Others are loaded with traps, turrets, or hazards that force you to reposition constantly. It keeps you thinking, keeps you adapting, and more importantly, keeps you from falling into a routine. There's no safe build here. You're never really safe. Enemies are aggressive, but they're not just fodder. They scale with your momentum. The more you survive, the more they press you. And the bosses, these fanatical leaders of the cult of eternity, don't just hit hard. They feel like they're part of something larger. Each one has a design and attack style that says something about their belief system, their role in this world, and their connection to the bigger mystery behind death's imprisonment. That brings us to the narrative. Yes, there is one, but it's not dumped on you. BloodRush does storytelling through repetition and subtle changes. With every failed run, you come back just a little closer to understanding what's going on. The stranger isn't just trying to survive. He's trying to break death out of her prison. And the cult? They're not villains in the traditional sense. There's a twisted philosophy at play, and you start to see glimpses of it through cryptic dialogue, environmental storytelling, and the increasingly strange behavior of your enemies. It's layered, not deep in a lore dump kind of way, but in a slow burn reveal that gives meaning to the chaos. The more you play, the more it feels like there's a reason for all of this. The draining health, the endless combat, the obsession with eternity. There's something unsettling about it all, and the game never fully lets you relax. Even the music keeps that tension alive. The soundtrack is moody, gothic, and constantly pulsing in the background. It matches the game's atmosphere perfectly, never overwhelming, always brooding. Visually, the pixel art here is sharp, not overdone, not overly gritty. It walks a fine line between style and readability. Animations are tight, the stranger moves with purpose, and the effects are just flashy enough to make your combos feel satisfying without getting in the way of clarity. You can tell the devs knew exactly where to dial things up and where to keep things clean. And maybe that's the best way to sum up BloodRush Undying Wish. It's a game that understands its identity. It doesn't waste your time with fluff or filler. It throws you into the fire and teaches you to keep moving. Every death teaches you something. Every run pushes you to go just a little further. And when it all clicks, when your build works, when your fingers are flying, when your health is down to a sliver and you still manage to wipe out an entire wave, it's incredibly satisfying. If you're into roguelikes that challenge your reflexes and creativity, if you like games that demand your attention but reward your skill, BloodRush is absolutely worth checking out. It's intense, it's stylish, and it doesn't pull its punches. Just don't expect to stand still for long. This world doesn't wait.